Lesson 9.2, we're going to be talking about angles of rotation. You guys have kind of done a little bit of experience with this before. You've talked about some basic ones like a 90-degree rotation. Okay, 180-degree rotation would be a half turn. Somebody doing a 360 would be a full turn. That's all talking about angles of rotation. And we're going to start out talking about drawing these angles of rotation kind of on a coordinate plane. And then we're also going to talk about finding coterminal angles. Then you guys are going to learn a new measure of rotation, which would be called radians, and radians are going to be something that we use more in trigonometry. Okay, so starting out, we're just going to talk about drawing these angles of rotation. And to get us going on that, we got some vocabulary. The first part is an angle is said to be in initial position when the vertex is on the origin and one of the rays is on the positive x-axis. The terminal side of the angle is the ray of the angle that is rotated relative to the x-axis. And an angle formed by rotating the terminal side and keeping the initial side in place is called the angle of rotation. Okay, now there's a lot of vocabulary there, and without a visual it's kind of hard to explain, so I'm going to go ahead and pull up a visual. This is all stuff that you guys can add off in your margins of your notes as you're taking them. Okay, but I've pulled up here and I've got a coordinate plane up here so that we can see it. All right. And what we have here first, we have our initial position. Our initial position is first. So this right here is the initial position. Okay, if you guys remember, it said it's on the positive x-axis. Okay, this is where the positive numbers would be on our x-axis. This part in red here, is our terminal side. Part in red is our terminal side. So the red little ray thing, if you guys are thinking of games you used to play, there's a spinner. Okay, that spinner is your terminal side. Now, I can take that terminal side and I can rotate it. Okay, so for example, say I've got this terminal side here, I can rotate this terminal side. Okay, when I rotate this terminal side, there's going to be an angle formed, and the angle formed from the initial side to the terminal side, this angle right here, when I move the terminal side, this angle, remember we can use theta to represent an angle, that angle is going to be our angle of rotation. Okay, so essentially what we're going to be doing for this first part of this is we are going to be drawing pictures where you guys have rotated your terminal side to a certain spot. You're going to label it with what the angle is. Okay, so just some kind of basic ones to show you guys real quick here. I don't know how that blue thing got on there. I guess I can't delete it. Okay, anyway. So initially, one that we could do would be so this is our starting position. Is that not going to let me drag? Okay, let me go over to my computer. We have our starting position down below where we started it, and let's say I want to rotate something 90 degrees. Well, I could rotate that up to the top here, and now the angle that I have formed from this, I rotate it up, that would be a 90-degree angle of rotation. Okay, so that's the initial thing that we are going to talk about when we are working through these. There is one other thing that I was supposed to cover on this page, and it's a question. It says the terminal side can be rotated more than 360 degrees. That is not a question, that's a statement, and it is a true statement. Okay, so essentially that means that you can rotate that terminal side as many times as you want to. Okay, so your angle of rotation can be greater than 360 degrees. 360 degrees would be a full rotation. All right, there are two types of rotation that can happen. There is a positive rotation and there is a negative rotation. If you guys rotate something positively, it is going to be moving in the counterclockwise. So counterclockwise is positive. If you have a rotation that moves in the clockwise direction, that's going to be a negative rotation. Okay, clockwise is negative, counterclockwise is positive. The way that I remember is I don't necessarily remember I don't remember counterclockwise or clockwise. I think of it like this. If I go back to my picture here, delete all that stuff. Okay, I've got my terminal side in my initial position. Terminal side is in my initial position. If I'm going to have a positive rotation, which way am I going to move this? Up. Up is a positive rotation. Okay? If I want to move in a negative direction, I'm going to move down. So I just look at how it initially rotates. So this would be positive because I'm moving up. This would be negative because I'm moving down. That's how I remember which one's positive and which one's negative. But you can also remember counterclockwise and clockwise as well. Okay? So, starting out then, drawing our angles of rotation. So your guys' homework, part of it is going to be in your book. And all you have to do to start with is you just have to start with drawing a coordinate plane for it first. You will need a coordinate plane. So we need to draw the angle in standard position. And we need to draw an angle of rotation of 60 degrees. Angle of rotation of 60 degrees. Now, you're not going to be using a protractor, so you're not going to be drawing this exact, but we can make this somewhat close. Okay? So this is how I go through and figure out how I'm going to draw these. 60 degrees. Well, that would be between 0 degrees, which would be if my terminal side hadn't moved at all, right? That would also be between 90 degrees, which we know that 90 degrees would be if it was straight up and down. So I know that my 60 degrees is somewhere here in the middle. Okay? Now I can get a little bit more accurate than that, because let's say I have this 90 in my 0, and let's say I cut it perfectly in half. Okay? What is halfway between 90 and 0? Well, halfway between 90 and 0 would be 90 divided by 2, gives me 45 degrees. So this line right here is 45 degrees. So if I want to draw my angle of rotation, it needs to be a little bit above 45 degrees. So when I draw my angle of rotation, I'm going to draw it a little bit above my 45. Okay? Now, since we aren't using a protractor and we are not being super accurate with it, we need to make sure that we label this. So I've drawn my angle there, and what I'm saying is I'm saying that this angle right here is 60 degrees. Okay? There's one other important thing that you need to have, and this comes in with the positives or the negatives. Since that is a positive 160, I need to show that I'm moving up. So I need to have an arrow at the other side of it and show that it's moving up. So that would be how I would draw an angle of rotation for 60 degrees. Okay? Next. You have a negative 125. Negative 125. That negative, remember, means that I'm going down to start. Okay? So, 0 degrees, but now I'm moving down. So this would be a negative 90 degrees. Okay? And 125 is more than negative 90 degrees, right? 125 is more than negative 90 degrees. So the next one that I would have as I continue my rotation around is I would get to negative 180 degrees. Okay? Reason I know that's negative 180 is if that's 90 and that's 90, 90 plus 90 gives me 180. Okay? Remember, they're negative because I'm moving down at the start of it. Okay. Now, 125 is going to be in between 180 and 90. Okay? So how can I figure out what's halfway in between 180 and 90? Well, I know from my last one that half of 90 was 45, right? So I could take 90 plus 45 to figure out what that is. That'd be 5 and 13. So 135, halfway in between there, that's 135. So my 125 is going to be in between here, and it's going to be pretty close to 135, right? So if I know my 135 line is there, I'm going to draw just a little bit down below it. Okay, am I super accurate on this? No, but how do I prove that I'm super accurate? I'm going to draw my arrow. Remember, it started down, and I'm going to label that negative 125 degrees. Negative 125 degrees. Okay, so I've given you an example of a positive one. I've given you an example of a negative one. So then the next one that we want to do would be whoops, we've got 480 degrees. That's a pretty big number, right? Some of you guys might look at 480 and be like, okay, I know for a fact that 480 is going to be more than a full rotation, because I remember that a full rotation is 360. Okay, so 480 might be more than a full rotation. We can check though. It's positive, so I'm moving up, right? So that's 0 degrees. This is 90 degrees, right? We talked about that would be a 90-degree angle. We already talked about that this is 180 because that's 90 plus 90. Still not enough rotation yet. Then I go down. What's 90 plus 180? Well, that would be 270 degrees. Keep going, another 90, that's 360 degrees. Another 90, so now I'm on my second part of my rotation there. So it's not 90 degrees anymore. 90 plus 6 would be 450. 450 degrees plus another 90 would be 540. Okay, so if I have 480 degrees, 480 is between 450 and 540. So I'm going to be in this section when I'm drawing it. Okay? Now, something else that might help you guys if you don't want to have to count all the way around to figure out where that is, since we know that 360 is a full rotation, right off the bat, I can take 480 minus 360. And if I take 480 minus 360, then that's going to give me 120. Okay, so really I'm just trying to draw a 120 degree angle. So 90 degrees and 180 degrees. Okay, we already talked about that 135. We did that on that last one, right? 135 is halfway in between. That'd be 45 and 45. Okay. So 135, so that means 120 is going to be a little bit above. Okay. It's going to be a little bit above that 135. So when I go to draw this, I'm going to draw my line. Okay. Now, I don't label this as 120 because they want me to label this as 480 degrees. So I'm going to start on my terminal side. And since I know that I made one full rotation, I'm going to show that when I draw this. I'm going to draw a full circle around and then come back to my line. So I kind of make a little spiral there. Okay, and then I can label my spiral 480 degrees. Okay, so that's the first part of your homework, is just drawing these angles of rotation. Okay, the next video I have is going to be pretty short. It's going to be on finding coterminal angles. And then we will finish off with finding the radians and converting back between degrees and radians.